of housekeeping, and you'll be on. Take as much time as you need.
Great.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to let you know that the latest issue of the Forks Over Knives magazine has hit the shelves. It's a fabulous magazine with wonderful recipes, each one with a picture. But I have a surprise for you. This month, they did a story about me, and not only that, but they asked my opinion on my favorite plant-based items, and there's a little bit of a secondary thing, so please consider picking it up. They have it at Whole Foods, on newsstands, and I hope you'll get it. Well, today is the first Monday of the month, so you know what that means. It's time for McDougall Monday. We hope they'll come back once a month, and it just happens to be Monday. We so love spending time with them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that we get asked a lot about, weight loss and Mary's Mini. We touched on it last time, but really not in detail. Please welcome back to the show, Dr. John and Mary McDougall. Always good to see you guys.
Hello.
Thanks, AJ.
Thanks, AJ.
You know, the topic of today was not my choice, but you know, people want to know about this, and of course, it's named after Mary. I just want you to know I have never been on a diet. So anyway, we put together after our presentation with you last month. We realized people had a lot of questions, so we put together a few details about Mary's Mini diet. It's a diet. I believe it's a diet. Remember, the McDougall program is the way you live. You can push it to the maximum weight loss program if you want. You can live, but if you want to do something temporary to really force those extra pounds off, you know, we got a diet for you.
Yeah, I used to be on diets a lot when I was younger.
Before you
So
met
I
me.
know what diets are.
Mary, I had no idea, because you seem to be a naturally slender person to me. I never realized that you were ever on a diet.
I was on a diet. There were times in my life when my top weight was 140. So I'm at least 30 pounds less than that.
At least.
Yeah.
My top weight was 230, which is about 90 pounds.
But I loved them anyway.
Wow. So but you didn't know about the McDougall diet at that point, right, Mary?
No. I was dieting. I was either starving myself, or I was eating only one kind of food. One of my favorite dinners was a can of stewed tomatoes. And
That's something. So what the diets that you heard about when you were dieting, what were popular at the time?
I think the Atkins diet was, but you know, I never got into that. I never did. So for me, it was always restricting food and being hungry. And, you know, only eating one thing.
You know, I had a thought that you haven't talked about in probably 2 decades. You used to work for a diet doctor.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Before you met me, you worked for, if you want to tell them about a little bit about that.
I worked in a diet clinic, and it was one of those places where mostly women,
Of course.
came in 3 times a week for a shot of HCG.
Yeah, it's horse hormone.
Horse hormone.
Horse shots.
And it was supposed to make them lose weight. And I tell you, I don't know if they ever lost weight, because we never weighed them that often, but they were there lined up at the door 3 times a week.
It's a perfect gimmick. You know, I don't have to be responsible for my weight gain.
Yeah.
It's the fact that I'm missing this special horse hormone.
Yeah.
But
No,
who
I
knows? People
forgot
have tried
all
everything.
about
They've
that.
tried wiring their teeth together. They used to eat tapeworms. That was a common method in the 1800s, to eat tapeworms so that the worm would
worm would
eat the calories. Yeah. You know, nothing's of limit. They even go so far as to make themselves sick by eating the Atkins diet. That's how desperate people are. That's almost as bad as taking horse. Well, probably maybe worse than taking horse. I would rather have horse urine.
Pregnant urine from a pregnant woman's urine. That's what I thought it was.
No,
Well,
but-
yeah, but you don't have enough pregnant women. I think it's HCG hormone.
yeah, it was a horse. It was horse hormone.
Yeah, I think it
A
got from horses.
pregnant horse hormone.
Yeah, the horses make HCG too.
Yeah.
You can't go just taking all this HCG from pregnant women. You know, this would be, horses are easy. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember the shots.
Well, one of the things I always hear you say, Dr. Dr. McDougall, one of the things I've always heard you say is you cannot maintain a diet style that will leave you hungry all the time.
No, hunger is a basic drive. You got to understand that, you have 3 drives that keep you alive. There are lots of drives that you have that you'd kill for, like the drive for sex, drive for money, drive to protect your children, but you don't have to do these things to stay alive. There are only 3 drives that keep sex. Did I mention sex? You don't have to have that to keep alive, AJ. I wanted to mention that twice for you. There are 3 drives that keep you alive. There's breath, thirst, and hunger. Okay. The thing about breath is you've only got one choice. The thing about thirst is you only got one choice. The thing about hunger is you've got all these different choices. Think about how long you could deny your breathing drive. 3 minutes, you're dead. Thirst, a few days, you're dead. Food, 60 days and you're dead. So it's a very powerful drive that we need to satisfy. Have you ever gone without food? My goodness, if you want to learn a little bit about yourself, stop eating food for a weekend. I guarantee you by Sunday night, you'll have no more money problems. You'll have no more spouse problems. You won't worry about nuclear war. You have only one thought in your mind. That's food. It's such a powerful drive. You can't beat it.
And then nobody believes it's that powerful.
Well, just don't eat for a weekend.
Yeah, just don't eat for a weekend.
We've done that a couple of times just as an experiment. We've gone without food for a weekend. Try it.
Well, a lot of people, they go to programs where they have to count something, calories, carbs, points, weigh and measure food on a plate. And it works very well while they're doing it, but they don't seem to be able to sustain it. Like your program where you get to eat boatloads of food every day.
You never have to be hungry.
And it's good food. And it's kind to animals and it's great for the planet and it's cheap. Cut your food bill by 80%.
So Dr. McDougall, I shouldn't use this book then. This wouldn't help me lose weight, huh?
Hey, I want to point out something to you. Atkins is dead. I'm still alive.
And the thing is, it's so unsatisfying. And I'm so tired of people bashing potatoes. We had a conversation this morning by email. It's like, leave potatoes and rice alone. Leave them alone. This is all I eat, really. And I'm pretty healthy, I think, for 61 and a half.
Well, yeah. AJ, that's all you eat, but it's all that 99.99% of people worldwide throughout history have eaten. I mean, almost everybody's been on a starch-based diet. We'll get into that in just a minute. But what's happened over the last 100 years, certainly the last 50 years worldwide, is we've become so wealthy that we can eat like kings and queens, like aristocrats. And so we're sickly, we're overweight, we've got gout and other arthritis conditions and diabetes, and, the diseases of the royalty of the past. And we eat at Burger King and Dairy Queen and Imperial Margarine. I mean, you think they're not even trying to fool us.
Well, and the supermarkets don't make it any easier. I mean, you have to eat, and so you're hungry, and then you go shopping, and there's thousands and thousands of products that you can choose from. And if you're hungry when you shop, your basket just gets piled in with all this junk.
Can't beat that hunger drive.
And they always put the most hyper palatable stuff right at the register.
Right in the front, yeah.
Well, I think what people need to know, AJ, is that the human being was not designed incorrectly. Everything about us is correct. So if it's a problem with our weight, say becoming so heavy we can't get around, we develop these diabetic conditions. And so this is unnatural. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Health is the way it's supposed to be. Trim, strong is the way it's supposed to be. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame your body. Don't even blame your emotions. The problem is the food. It's the food. You fix the food, I guarantee you, no matter what you think, no matter how many problems you have, you're gonna get your health back tremendously. It's just a no-brainer. It always works. Just like you drop a bowling ball on your foot, it always hurts. Or you stop smoking and you stop coughing, or you stop drinking booze and you stop falling down. I mean, this is like easy to understand.
Well, that was another way I used to lose weight, is I smoked a lot.
Oh, that's true. We have to get we have to talk about all our bad habits.
Okay.
Well, Dr. McDougall, we know that carbohydrate and protein are 4 calories a gram, fat is 9 calories a gram, alcohol 7. I've heard you say that potatoes are only 1 calorie a gram. How is that possible?
I'm going to show you that in just a second.
So then how do people claim that they gain weight eating them? I'm not going to mention this person's name, but they watch the live shows often. And every time somebody's talking about starch, they go, I gain weight when I eat potatoes. Is it even possible?
Well, it depends on what they're eating with the starch.
Right.
If you're covering it with butter and bacon, yeah, they could gain weight, sure. And you know what? A lot of people don't tell the truth. They don't tell the truth to themselves. They don't tell the truth to their friends or their doctors. One of my mentors who you heard me talk about, Walter Kempner from Duke University, who designed the rice diet, he used to say all dieters are liars. I know, start out offending a few people, but that's where it goes. No, you can't. And I'll give you the evidence. Here's the evidence right now. Some of you are old enough to remember when in Asia, China, Japan, they used to eat 90% of their calories as white rice before 1980. Do you recall what Asians used to look like? I mean, I went through the Vietnam conflict, okay, very peripherally, thank goodness. And we would watch newsreels of 100,000 Vietnamese in a town square. There's not a one single overweight person. You got 2 billion Asians, and and they had money problems. They had infidelity problems. They had problems just like all of us do. But the correct food is going to condemn you to good health and good looks. That's all the way it is. You're supposed to look good. You're supposed to function well. You're supposed to feel well. If you're not, it's not because you eat too much. It's eat the wrong food.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so the right food is definitely not this.
Yeah. Well, we got some slides to show you, AJ, if you'd like. Maybe and you know what? Maybe you would interrupt as we go along a little bit. That'd be more fun.
Sure. If I have a question, or if any of the live viewers have a question.
Yeah, because Mary and I had fun putting this together, and what we decided we'd like to do is share with you some of the details of the program.
Yeah, and you actually have a program coming up next month, and I think there's still a few slots if people wanted to register.
Yeah, we do. We're on a 12-day telemedicine, telehealth program where you can sit in your home in Shanghai and you can attend, or Detroit or Miami, and you'll never feel disconnected. It's a 12-day program. And the results we've gotten are phenomenal. People who have been through it realize that it was an improvement to go from our residential program, which we ran for 34 years, to one where we run in the internet. It's a more intimate program. It's a more effective program. We're getting better weight losses, more compliance, a happier staff. I can tell you that. Anyway, yeah, we do run a program. So are you seeing us okay there, the little slides there?
Yeah, it says Mary's Mini Diet.
All right. Well, okay. Like I said, we've been working with people to help them lose weight, no exaggeration, for 45 years. Now, my focus has been on the health of people. I didn't really, their weight and how their personal appearance was. I knew what went along with it was important. But I'm a medical doctor. I wanted to cure their diabetes and their gout and their rheumatoid arthritis and stop their multiple sclerosis and so on. That was all my interest as an MD. But one of the side effects of the program that I recommend is you end up trim, healthy, stronger, and happier. That wasn't my plan. Anyway, it's a diet that we want to teach you about. What we're going to marry is a diet.
We have to focus on that. It's a diet.
It's a diet. Yeah, it's done. Diets are done temporarily to lose weight and accomplish short-term goals, and then you get off of it. That's the diet. All right. The basic McDougall program is described in various books that we wrote before 1990, as we focused on that. The first book we put together, you remember that, Mary?
Oh, that little brown book you can see there, it says 1979. We started out with a very thin book with just a few recipes, and then I would invent new recipes and punch holes in them and hand them out to our patients, put them on the rings of the little brown book, and we ended up with a book that was this fat.
Yeah, I think you can still buy them on the internet.
You can buy that book.
Well, maybe I got one from a friend. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, that's how we got started with that book. So 1979, we were teaching the full-on McDougall program, which hasn't changed much even to today. And then the next book we wrote was the McDougall Plan in 1983. And thanks to Larry King, I sold about 100,000 books in one night on a show. And so that became very popular. And then and by the way, that's out of print. And then the McDougall Program became popular, a national bestseller in 1990. And it's still a national bestseller. So we're 31 years later. And they just recently changed the cover because it's selling so well. So we must be doing something.
So don't look for the other cover and think you're getting a new book. It's the new cover. They thought the diet was so the diet.
Yeah, right. The
program was so popular that they better change the cover to make it look like a new book.
No, anyway, the content's the same. So this is a starch-based diet, includes refined grains like breads and pastas and things. Also includes a variety of high-fat foods, nuts, seeds, avocados. Use a little salt and sugar on the surface of the food because we want you to like the food. And it contains no animals, no vegetable oils, and no fake foods like, Boca burgers and fake hot dogs and fake cheeses. We don't serve those. That's the basic McDougall diet. That started out, we've been doing that for a long time, for 45 years. And we've had books out there for the last 30 to 40 years. It's based on some basic facts. So Mary, let me take over here for a minute.
Okay.
It's based on some facts that you can verify for yourself. You don't have to believe me. You just look around, you'll see it. First thing you want to notice is that all large populations of people throughout all of verifiable history have eaten the bulk of their calories as starch. And the American Indian lived on corn. People in Central America, the Mayas and Aztecs, were known as the people of the corn. In South America, in the Andes, people lived on potatoes. That's what the Incas ate until they went to battle, and then they lived on quinoa. The Far East, you think of rice. How about Egypt and Israel? They used to be known as the breadbasket of the world. Now, 99.99% of people have lived on starch-based diets. Okay, the other way you can deal with this on a geographic point of view is you can look at the world today and you can see where obesity is common and where people are still trim, and that's rapidly vanishing, I'll tell you. So, but take a look. And then what you do is you want to emulate the habits of people who are trim and healthy. And that certainly isn't Americans or Australians or New Zealanders or Canadians and so on, the people in dark color there. And the other thing I want to point out that I think is a really important evidence because of the numbers, and that is that there are hundreds of millions of people who eat starch-based diets alive today. Okay, probably 3 billion people who've obtained the bulk of their calories from starches. And prior to 1980, as I told you, the Japanese lived on 90% of their diet is rice. Do you picture people of that era from Japan as being overweight or trim? I know you think of sumo wrestlers. They fed them a special diet. China, the same thing. How do you picture these people? And the other thing I want to point out is, what do they live on? A single starch, right?
Yeah.
They live on rice. It's not like they have rice. That's one primary starch. Same thing with people in Central America. I mean, corn. That was like 90% of their food. So they ate a very simple diet where they repeated, and I want you to remember this because you're going to emphasize, where they repeated the same food over, they had a monotonous diet.
So they had Mary's Mini way back then.
You weren't supposed to tell them that. All right. So starch, as I hope I've made the contest for you, is at least to think about it, at least to decide whether this is true to you. Starch is the diet of human beings. We're starchitarians, starchivores, starch eaters. And until you get that, you're out of control. So the way you ought to look at it is you've got to get calories. And so you have to have the starch to get calories. Otherwise, you're fatigued. You can't do anything. You lose weight. You die if you don't have enough calories. Well, your starches are probably about 100 calories per serving. And maybe if you get up to bread, it's 250 calories per serving. You've got to have this as the primary part of your diet. 90% of the diet is starch. Just look at it. You don't have to count it. Just look at it. And by eyeballing, you see that 90% of the diet is starch. To that, again, this is the basic McDougall diet. We added plenty of non-starchy vegetables. And that's traditional diet food, non-starchy vegetables, 5 to 30 calories per serving. And we added some fruits, that's 60 to 100 calories per serving. But the bulk of the basic McDougall program is starch. Now, it's really important that you have enough starch or you're not going to be satisfied. Okay, this is key. There are a lot of you out there that have been on nutrient-dense diets. Let me say that again, nutrient-dense. You're trying to get all these vitamins and phytochemicals and all this stuff to overwhelm an unhealthy system. It doesn't work. If you try and live on broccoli or cauliflower or kale, you're not going to make it. You know, it would take 11 pounds of cabbage a day for me to get enough calories. I don't have time to eat that much. The other thing is you don't get satisfied without enough starch. And so if you're walking around thinking, boy, I sure like to eat, the problem is you didn't eat enough starch. I want to cover 3 basic things before we move on to Mary's mini diet. Is that what each of these beakers represents is the size of your stomach. 500 calories I put into each one of these stomachs of different foods. And what I want you to notice is the first kind of pinkish bar up there, the calories per gram. Fat is 9 calories per gram. That translates into oil, like vegetable oil and margarines and butters and so on. 9 calories per gram is the most calorie dense of all commonly consumed foods. Cheese and meat are 4 calories per gram. You know, it barely fills up a third of your stomach if all you get is 500 calories of meat or cheese. You're still ravenously hungry. The rice, I almost fill up the whole stomach. And the corn, you'd fill up the entire stomach. I can't even find room for all the potatoes to make 500 calories. So the first...
That's a potato sitting on the top of that stomach, by the way.
Looks like a mushroom.
It does.
Anyway, the point being is the first accomplishment when you get the right kind of foods, you change from calorie dense to calorie dilute foods. Now, one confusion I want to straighten out is when I say that starches are very low in calories, people go, no, they're 4 calories per gram. Starches are 4 calories per gram, they tell me. What they're getting confused about, AJ, is white table sugar. That's 4 calories per gram, just like meat and cheese. To take and change the sugar from something that's sitting in a bowl to a potato, you got to add water and fiber and protein and all kinds of stuff, and you dilute the calorie content out to where it's 1 calorie per gram. Is that clear? AJ?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. The second thing is the fat you eat is the fat you wear. The body is highly economical, AJ, and it's going to take and do the most efficient thing with everything you give it. Well, fat is the metabolic dollar for when no food's available. It's stored in your butt, in your thighs, in your abdomen, so that when the famine comes, you're going to survive. And famines used to be pretty common.
But there haven't been any in a long time.
So the fat you eat is the fat you wear. The beakers on the right, which would be the corn, the potatoes, the rice, have almost no fat to wear. I mean, good grief, rice is 5% fat. Corn is 8% fat. Potatoes are 1% fat. Whereas your butter is 100% fat, your cheese is about 70%, and your meats go from 60 to 80% fat. Just common sense.
And look at how full your stomach would be.
Well,
if you ate rice and corn and potatoes, I mean, your stomach is jam full.
Which I like to feel.
Yeah,
but it doesn't last though. That's the problem. Is you get full, just like when the people used to take fiber pills. You ever go on that diet?
No.
People used to take fiber. You can fill up the stomach with these fiber pills, but it leaves you wanting in a few minutes. You got to have that sustained relief, and to get that, you have to have the right kind of food. All right, so you got the fat you eat, the fat you wear. I can biopsy your body fat. I can tell what kind of food you like to eat or don't like to eat. The third principle that's really important is that carbohydrate satisfies the hunger drive. So after you fill the stomach, Mary, then you've got to last until lunch and dinner and your midnight snack. Well, to last those long periods of time, what you need to do is eat starch. Sugar, when I say sugar, I mean table sugar and sugar, that would be in potatoes, rice, and corn. Sugar satisfies the hunger drive. That's how the body responds. That's how you know you've had enough to eat, is you consume enough carbohydrate. Well, butter, no carbohydrate to satisfy the hunger drive. Cheese, no carbohydrate to satisfy the hunger drive. Meat, no carbohydrate to satisfy the hunger drive. Am I getting repetitive? Your starches are about 70 to 90% carbohydrate that satisfies your hunger drive. Nice, you put all these together, and the right diet is calorie dilute, not very much fat to wear, but it always supplies your nutritional needs. And are you waving at me, JJ?
Oh, I'm waving at you because I don't mean to interrupt. It's just that there's something you said that, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question before I forget. And I agree with you, by the way. You say carbohydrate satisfies the hunger drive. And I think you've once even said starch is to the hunger drive what oxygen is to the breathing drive. But Dr. McDougall, so many people I hear from say, but if I don't eat fat, I have to add, tahini to it or peanut sauce, or I'm still hungry. So is it the calorie density they're seeking, because maybe they're just still afraid to eat enough starch? But I do hear from people that without fat, they're not satisfied. That's not me. These are other people commenting.
I understand, AJ, but you remember when you went through your transition, when you changed your diet, each phase of change of diet was fought by the fact that you had previous habits and previous likings. So people are used to eating fat or meat or cheese or so on, and they're used to this grease in their stomach. The way I like to describe it is kind of like when you went to a Chinese restaurant. This has been my experience, is people would say after a Chinese meal, I'm hungry 15 minutes later or half an hour later. Well, I don't think the Chinese are hungry 15 minutes or half an hour later. It's that you're all of a sudden you're presented at a Chinese restaurant without a whole pile of grease and a glob of meat. And it's a different sensation. But you have the ability to adjust. And once you do, you'll find the other foods very unpleasant. But yes, I've heard that too. But it just doesn't pan out when you do experimental studies. When people are fed high carbohydrate diets, they are satisfied. People are fed high fat diets, you hardly even notice it.
Thank you.
Okay, did I give you enough answer there?
Yeah, no, thank you. And I agree with you.
Sorry, I want you. Yeah.
It does come up quite a bit.
Hey, listen, I haven't had it in probably 20 years, but I bet a pepperoni pizza would be very satisfying for me.
But Dr. McDougall, we shouldn't be using fat with our starches, right? Because I think what happens with a lot of people, they're putting peanut sauce on their potatoes or tahini. And I remember from your advanced study weekend where I gave my talk from Fat Vegan to Skinny Bitch in September of 2015, Dr. Clapper spoke and he said, if you're going to use these high fat foods, you eat them like with vegetables and you don't eat them with starch.
Well, except you're not going to get the satisfying effect of carbohydrate. You see, vegetables are low in carbohydrates, so they're not going to be satiating. And oils provide essentially no satisfaction. So anyway, what I would say is this, our approach is not an all or nothing approach. You get results. So if the best you could do is rice and vegetables, a little peanut sauce, well, that's where you're at right now. But I can't function that way. I'm a medical doctor. I have people who come to me with terrible diabetes, breast cancer, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis. They can't have a little bit. And likewise, there are people out there that don't want to take any risk at all. Why not teach you the best thing possible? So anyway, just to summarize, you want to pick calorie dilute foods that are low in fat, so you have no fat to wear, and that are high carbohydrate that satisfy your hunger drive. And those are your starches. You are a starch eater. You must learn this. Okay, our results from feeding thousands of people a healthy diet, our results are the average weight loss when we studied 1,703 people, the average weight loss was 3.1 pounds in 7 days. That's eating as much food as you want and delicious food. Now, our results were also studied independently by Oregon Health and Science University, and also a study done in New Zealand on a community. And these studies show that people maintain a 20 to 25 pound weight loss over a year. In other words, once they permanently change their diet, they have permanent control of their body weight. All right. Back in 1994, we got a lot of complaints. About what?
Well, people weren't losing weight fast enough, and they wanted a diet that would help them lose weight.
McDougall's, why don't you write a weight loss book? And I kept trying to say, look, I'm a doctor. And so we finally did. And it was published 27 years ago, AJ, and it's still a national bestseller.
Because it's a great book. That's why.
Yeah. Well, we got a new cover this year too. So you know they're going to keep it around another 20 years. But it's a classic. People understand the value of this type of teaching. Most do. All right, so let's kind of talk about how it changed.
But basically, it's still the same McDougall program. There's just a few changes.
It's always a starch-based diet. No matter where we go, it's a starch-based diet. So anyway, we made some changes.
So we eliminated all refined grains like breads and even pastas and muffins.
Right.
And even corn tortillas, because they're refined.
Uh-huh.
So we eliminated all of that, but then we eliminated high-fat foods
We're
like
going to get rid of those.
avocados and nuts and seeds. So we changed that part of it, but we still used a little bit of salt on the surface of the food.
And you gave them fruit too.
I gave him fruit. I gave him two fruits.
Two or three. Come on.
He says they could have 3 fruits a day. But
Let me explain to you why we made some of these changes. It's a very important study done by Haber, published in The Lancet in 1977. He took people and he hooked them up with an IV so he could draw blood out of their arms whenever he wanted to. And what he did is he fed these people different forms of a food. And then what he did is he measured their blood sugar and he measured their insulin levels. When he fed the people, in this case, it was an apple. What happened is their blood sugars went up just a little bit and went down a little bit, and their insulin levels went up just a tiny bit. Then he took the apples, with peeling, seeds, stems, the whole business, and ground it into applesauce. And he watched the blood sugars go up a little bit and then way down, and the insulin levels went up a lot. Insulin, by the way, pushes fat into fat cells. So you don't want the insulin levels up there. And then what he did is he took the bulk out of the pulp, out of the applesauce, and he made apple juice. In the words of the conclusion of the study, juice was consumed 11 times faster than an apple. Juice was less satisfying. Insulin levels rose higher and blood sugars fell lower. In other words, hypoglycemia. In 1977, Heber knew that you should eat your foods as much intact as possible. But I want to add a caveat here, AJ, and that is the human body is tough. So if you want to have some applesauce and some fruit juice, it ain't no big deal for most people. However, those people who are really fighting the weight loss picture, which is why we introduced this concept, understand that the more you damage the food, the less friendly it's going to be to your body and your waistline. Important work done on flours. What they did is they ground flour from whole wheat berries, and what they found was that they call it glycemic index, glucose. The glycemic index goes up a lot higher. But what they're talking about is the insulin levels go up higher. Flour raises your insulin levels. And remember, insulin pushes fat into fat cells. This is one of the detriments of a diabetic is the fact that putting them on treatment, like insulin shots or pills that make insulin go up, the average weight gain in a year is 18 pounds just from the medication, from the insulin. Anyway, you release more insulin when you damage the whole grains. And with the maximum weight loss program, Mary, what'd you do to it?
What did I do to him? Well, what we did is we figured it out so that if you want to lose weight at a moderate rate, but still lose weight, we would say eyeball your plate and make 2/3 of your plate starch and 1/3 of your plate vegetables. If you want to do it really fast, then you'd make half of your plate starch and half of it vegetables. Now, we never weighed anything. We just told you to eyeball your plate, see what it looks like. But if you really want to be tasty,
But
Yeah, well,
hasty is not
hasty
wise.
you know, let's get into my bathing suit really fast, or let me get into my bridesmaid's dress for a wedding. Then you'd have 1/3 of your plate as starch and 2/3 as vegetables.
The thing is that this is not sustainable, the hasty approach. And that's why I've called it the hasty approach for the last 27 years.
You prefer the tasty approach over the hasty approach.
Yes, he does.
Remember, half the diet is still starch in the maximum weight loss program. So the maximum weight loss program, we cut back fruit for a very simple reason, is fruits taste good. You're familiar with fruit. And as a result, you may make the bulk of your diet fruit, which, by the way, is very short as far as sustaining your hunger. What happens is, because it's simple sugars, is the sugar goes up very rapidly and down very rapidly. It's rapid absorption, rapid utilization. So hunger returns quite quickly. Whereas your starches and vegetables, they're all mixed up with a whole bunch of other substances that are in the plant parts, but they are also in long chains of sugar that are only slowly digested. And so they keep the supply of carbohydrate, of sugar going into the system on a very steady, long-term, and very satisfying way. Fruit is so tasty that.
Well, we could say, well, in the time that we've been sitting here talking to you, you could have eaten 4 fruits.
I could have eaten 20 nectarines.
You could have eaten 20 nectarines because he loves nectarines. But look at how many calories that would be. That'd be 2,000 calories just of nectarines. And that wouldn't be starch.
No, it's not. It's not something that, I mean, this is still a lifestyle you can live, but you've got to still get that starch in, and you've got to still eat reasonable foods that you like. So Mary's Mini, that kind of started behind our back, didn't it?
It did. People decided that they wanted to do this really fast. So they took the maximum weight loss program and they turned it into Mary's Mini. And there were so many varieties of Mary's Mini on the website that we decided we had to do this once and for all and answer the questions that people have about Mary's Mini.
Right.
Because it's basically the McDougall program. It's just tweaked just a little bit.
Well, enough to make it a diet.
Enough to make it a diet.
Okay, well, we started this in 2006, so it's been a big hit. Like I say, it's pretty much behind our backs. We've never written a book about Mary's Mini. Maybe we should do that.
Maybe we should do it.
And so you'll find those in two newsletters that were published in 2006. And that's why we're here today, to talk about Mary's Mini Diet. So Mary, what do you do on the Mini Diet?
Well, the main thing is it's still starch-based, and it has fruits and vegetables, so that's the same. The difference is you have to pick one starch. And one starch is all you get to eat for all 3 meals for 10 days.
You mean like the Japanese of old and the Chinese of old?
Yeah,
and people from Central America of old. Oh, okay, I got same.
Okay,
all
so
they have is this corn and rice, and
that's what you eat. So if you choose potatoes, then you have potatoes for breakfast, and you have potatoes for lunch, and you have potatoes for dinner. Yeah. It makes it easy.
Yeah, it makes it, we'll get to that for sure.
But you don't change your starch from one day to the next. You can't have rice one day for your starch and potatoes the next day for your starch, or sweet potatoes the next day for your starch. It's one starch per meal per day.
That sounds monotonous.
Well, that's the idea.
Sounds like I'd suffer. Just like on these calorie restricted diets, I'd be hungry all the time.
Well, you wouldn't be hungry all the time. Or
the Atkins diet, I'd get so sick, I'd be sick all the time.
You'd be eating as much starch as you want.
Mary, I'm on a diet. Make me suffer. Come on.
Well, the suffering part comes when you only get one starch a day.
Oh, you're tough. All right. So what does monotony do? Well, or let's just say, what does variety do? Variety, I guess, is the enemy of rapid weight loss. Studies done as early as 1980 showed that when you added other foods to a meal plan, people took in about 1/3 more calories if you make the variety enough. And there were multiple studies, I listed them here for you, that show the same thing. Presentation of 3 solid food units for flavors increased intake compared to presentation of a single flavor. The data suggests that increasing the variety of sensorial distinct foods that are virtually identical in composition can increase food and energy intake. So the final analysis is, at least the most current up-to-date analysis, was just published. It was published in March of 2021 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which is really the most important nutrition journal in the world. And what they found is they found 34 articles in 37 studies. Their conclusion is, with greater variety being associated with increased consumption. They didn't find it with fruits and vegetables.
They only found it with starch?
No, they only found it by adding animal foods, other types of things.
Oh, other types. I see. Okay.
So anyway, the more variety you eat, if you had an all, that's a good question. If you had an all vegetable diet, would it increase it? They didn't find it, at least in their setup. But the point I'm trying to make is that increasing variety increases the amount of calories you take in at the end of the day. All right, there are some advantages to go on this kind of simple diet.
Well, the advantage is it's a diet.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're suffering,
Yeah.
you know, and it's monotonous.
You're doing something different for sure.
Yeah, it's monotonous. So because you only choose one starch.
And you don't have to figure out what to eat for dinner.
You don't have to figure out what to eat for dinner. It gets boring really fast. So you eat less food. And let's see, you can eat as often as you want though, so you don't have to be hungry. So that's a good thing.
Well, from a medical point of view, it may be healthier to eat a simple diet. And the reason is when you introduce a whole bunch of varieties of foods and you're introducing a whole bunch of different kinds of proteins and other substances the body has to deal with. So the body has to make various metabolic changes to adapt to everything that you eat, to metabolize it. Well, if you have a very simple diet, then it makes these adaptations and doesn't have to redo them. It can put all its energy into taking care of a simple diet. And it won't be confronted with as many things that it has to adjust to. So it has some health point of view. But I think probably the most important thing, I'll probably get into trouble with this. Well, I was raised in a Catholic neighborhood.
Yeah.
And guilt was important. So you can cheat on Mary's Mini. And you know what you end up doing? You get to cheat and go back to the regular McDougall diet and you get all the guilt you want.
It's not a McDougall diet. It's the McDougall program.
Thank you. All right, let's show them some quick examples of.
Okay, so if you chose potatoes as your starch, now remember every day for 10 days, this is your meal plan. You could have hash brown for breakfast, you could have baked potatoes for lunch, and for dinner you could have mashed potatoes, or you could switch it around. But there's so many ways that you can fix potatoes that for 10 days you probably wouldn't get too bored. But let me tell you, at the end of 10 days, you really don't want to look at another potato again for a while.
We did a 10-day, what was it, potato diet.
Yeah.
We did it when one of our children developed serious allergies, and we wanted to make sure that it wasn't due to the food or helped by the food. And so 10 days of what?
10 days of potatoes.
Did we like it?
Yeah, we liked it. But by the end of 10 days, you were a little tired of salads and potatoes.
Well, there's an experiment done in 1928 that I've talked to many of you about, and that's the man and the woman who were marathon runners. 1928, they housed them in a metabolic unit so they knew exactly what they ate, and they stayed very physically active. And at the end of the 6-month period of time, they were in excellent health, and they said they did not tire of the all potato diet. But again, maybe 500 billion people or more than that, have lived on simple diets, and they don't seem to be unsatisfied. This variety thing is something that's pumped by the food industry and the grocery industry.
So if you chose sweet potatoes, now see, that's the difference. Many people ask, well, if I have white potatoes at one meal, can I choose, or for one day, can I choose sweet potatoes for the next day's starch? No, that would be too much variety, and we're trying to be monotonous here. So you choose sweet potato as your starch, then that's what you have for 10 days. But you could do sweet potato fries in an air fryer. You could do mashed sweet potatoes. You could do roasted sweet potatoes, which is what we love.
When you say we love it, make a little more emphasis on that. That's one of our favorite
That's
meals. You know, a great big baked sweet potato. You bake them.
Yeah, I bake them.
And broccoli, we usually have broccoli.
We usually have broccoli.
That's what I eat for lunch every day. I don't eat the orange ones though. I eat the Hannah yams.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, I do too.
like
we eat the orange ones also. They're more moist, and you just bake them in the oven for. I mean,
I can't imagine a better meal than sweet potatoes and broccoli.
I can't
And
either.
you know, the fact that you say sweet, you know, they are sweet, and the tastes on the tip of your tongue are for sweetness. There's even an individual taste bud for starch. So you've got the sweet tasting taste buds that love the simple sugars, which there seem to be a lot of in sweet potatoes. And you've got starch tasting taste buds on the tip of your tongue, which drive you to want starches. It's built into the system. It's built into the tongue. But yeah, we have that. We have broccoli. And what are they going to put over it?
Well, you can use things like fat-free, oil-free salad dressings without any sugar added to them. You can make salsas. They don't have to be sweet salsas. I make salsas with various kinds of potatoes, tomatoes. It's tomato season this year right now, so I make a lot of things with a variety of tomatoes. And you can use just sprinkle spices over the top of them.
What do you do, AJ?
Oh, but you know, I'm plain, and I just love them plain. Sweet potatoes don't need anything. But we have a question from Olive. Mary, are the flavored balsamic vinegars okay to use during a Mary's Mini, or is that too hyper palatable?
No, flavored balsamic vinegars are fine to use, and there's so many now that you can change the flavor of that you put on your potato easily with flavored balsamic vinegars. And you have sent me samples of some wonderful flavored balsamic vinegars. And so anybody should be able to find these. And you can put them on baked white potatoes also, or even on rice.
I was going to say, how about rice? We have them on rice a lot. Speaking of rice.
So you can have rice for breakfast. And a lot of people I've found like savory foods for breakfast. You don't have to have sweet foods for breakfast. That's just, something that came along. And everybody decided they had to have sweet. Probably because of the cereal industry. There's rows and rows of sweet tasting cereals. And so they decided we liked fruit for breakfast or fruit flavors.
They're pretty smart. They're pretty smart. They figured out that we have taste buds on the tip of the tongue for sugar.
But a lot of people like savory foods for breakfast. And so that's fine. And then for lunch, you could have rice with other kinds of, you put carrots here, but you could have other kinds of greens. And the same thing for dinner, just add different greens and tomatoes. And I make a great fried, I call it a fried rice dish, but it's rice and various kinds of vegetables and some balsamic vinegar.
This is the squash is something that I've heard. Actually, there's some people who teach you can't go on a winter squash diet.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well,
it's too low in caloric density. Aren't winter squashes only about 200 calories a pound?
I didn't calculate it per pound. I calculated it per serving, and it's about 50 to 80 calories per serving. Rice would be 100. Potatoes, I told you, were 70, 80, 90, 100. So they're not that far out of the ballpark. I think what people are getting confused about are summer squashes. Summer squashes are only 3 calories per gram, 2 or 3 or 4 calories per gram. And this would be like zucchini. You think about other summer squashes?
The patty pan squashes, the green and yellow zucchinis, cucumbers, those kind of things.
So you can live on a squash diet, but it's got to be the winter squashes.
Like acorn squashes or butternut squashes.
Or pumpkin.
Or a pumpkin, yeah.
But there's enough. What I want to point out is there's not plenty of calories for you to get enough carbohydrate calories to satisfy your hunger drive, and it's going to be very bulky. And winter squash may be. We're talking about Mary's mini diet, right?
Right.
We're talking about suffering and monotony. Winter squash may be the starch that you want to pick because it's lower on the calorie content of the various starches we recommend. All right, but I go out to eat.
And kabocha squash is incredible. Have you ever had
yes,
kabocha squash?
Great
Oh
meal.
my God, that's so sweet.
Well, remember the Tarahumara Indians in Copper Canyon in Mexico lived on a diet of corn and beans and squash. The running Indians. No heart disease, no diabetes, no obesity. Just a lot of lead poisoning these days from the cartel.
Mary, people are asking about, can beans be the starch, and can they use liquid aminos, which is, I guess, like a lower sodium soy sauce?
We're going to get to that in just a minute.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay? We're going to do all that.
Yeah.
We just want to give you one more idea. If you want to eat out, which we don't anymore very often, but you still could do your Mary's Mini as you ate out, because it could still be monotonous. You could go to a steakhouse and order a baked potato and a green salad. And then if you bring your own salad dressing along, like one of the flavored balsamic vinegars.
This is the truth out of our lives. She used to go into the Chart House in Honolulu, and she'd sit down at the table. We get our baked potato and salad. And she'd take out of her purse this big bottle of salad, and pop it down the middle of the table, and that was it. It was that hard. It's called the Chart House in Honolulu, right? Did I get the name
that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, we get
I
our
think
baked
it's
potato.
still there.
Baked potatoes and salad all the time.
Because restaurants don't care whether you bring your own salad dressing. You're still paying for the food that you eat. So what do they care if you bring? And you can pour it into a smaller jar. So it doesn't have to be a big jar. I used to carry a big jar because I had a big purse. But these days I have a smaller purse, so I take a smaller jar of salad dressing. But then you can do the same thing with rice. Or at a Thai restaurant, you could do
Green papaya
salad. But you know what you have to be really careful when you're in a Thai restaurant is you tell them to make it without the fish sauce and to make it with soy sauce instead of the fish sauce. But they don't use oil usually in their salad, and so you're safe there.
Mary, what are the noodles? Are there any rice noodles?
The rice noodles
that you can get in the Japanese places. What do they call it?
Soba noodle.
Soba noodles.
Soba.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, you have rice in the sushi.
Rice stick noodles, they're called.
Okay, so you order sushi. You go into a Japanese restaurant. You order sushi, say with cucumber or asparagus or what else they throw in there?
Avocado.
Well, I know, but they don't have. This is Mary's menu diet we're talking about.
Carrots.
They can cheat on.
They have carrots and cucumbers in those little
and
sushis.
You can order rice noodles. That's a little refined though. It's not ideal, but you're getting there.
But this is, you don't eat out every night.
Right.
The idea for the mini diet is to make it boring enough that, you stay home and you know what's for dinner, you know what's for lunch, you know what's for breakfast, because it's the same thing every day.
For those of you who follow any of our programs, the basic McDougall program, the maximum weight loss program, or Mary's mini diet, these are the weights you'll end up at. And I put those in my work almost 30 years ago because I got complaints about losing too much weight. I still get those complaints from people. Oh, my friends think I've lost too much weight. They think I'm sick or something.
Now remember, this is fully dressed.
Yeah.
Most people don't weigh themselves with their clothes on because they figure their clothes are going to add 2 or 3 pounds.
I want you to also point out to you those who had diabetes, heart disease, or kidney disease, they 15% less food. So they're supposed to be 15% lighter.
Lighter. That's what 15% lighter.
Yeah. Anyway, these values
be less than this.
These values are they're presented, I think, in my November 2017 newsletter, but I've been putting them on books for a long time. And it's just to reassure you, you're not being too thin. This is a normal, acceptable weight. And you can look at this chart and figure out where you fall.
I'm sure AJ gets the same kind of criticism.
Oh my God, yes.
No.
And I weigh like 10 pounds more than Mary, and I still get it, you know?
Yeah, it's just, and if you think about where you were at one time to where you are now, people that knew you then look at you and they think, oh, wow, she's really thin. But people that are just meeting you for the first time,
then they don't say anything.
you look great.
Part. Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I get though is like, how could you eat that much? Because they don't understand calorie density. And it's like wherever I go, like when I teach at Rancho La Puerta, where it's spa, calorie controlled, portion controlled, and I'm eating these things, and people they just look at me like they don't believe it.
How can you eat all that and look like you do?
Exactly. And it's like, they don't, I mean, God bless Dr. Barbara Rolls. I'm not kidding. I eat 3 pounds of food at every meal. Pounds, not ounces, pounds. It's so fun.
It is.
It is so much more fun than counting calories, carbs, points, weighing, and I don't even worry about it.
I never used to do that because I hated it so much. I would just starve.
Yeah,
that'd be my way.
Mary, what I get even more than I'm too thin is that I'm going to kill people because I don't, because I live by this mantra, which some of the doctors disagree with, the fat you eat. And I haven't eaten nuts, seeds, or an avocado in 10 years. And apparently I'm going to have dementia because of it, because I don't eat fat.
Yeah.
Well, AJ, we've got 20 years on you, so we can tell you it doesn't happen, at least by our age.
Yeah.
if you do lose too much weight, and it may be the type of thing where you don't want to be as thin as, say, Mary and I and AJ are, you can regain weight by going back on the McDougall program. I can make you obese. If I emphasize the nuts and seeds and avocados. So, don't think you can't be the same size you used to be when you weren't on a diet. You can return to those days by emphasizing the high fat, high calorie, high sugar foods.
Eat avocados and nuts, and you gain 10 pounds in a week.
That's what your daughter Heather said. I mean, not that she's ever been overweight, but she said when she eats those things, her weight goes up.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the plain nuts. I like the ones with sugar and candy.
Over
the top of, really get my taste buds stimulated.
But that's why they put nuts in a shell for a reason. Because you can't eat too many of them that way. But these days, all you have to do is open a jar and
suck them in,
pour them down.
But again, let me get back to the ones that the caramel coated almonds and stuff like that. Or even how about chocolate coated peanuts? Is that okay on the diet?
Oh my God, M&Ms. I used to love M&Ms with peanuts.
All right. Well, we want to answer some of your questions, and as we get ready for them, here's some of the things that we thought
we get all the time. So, can I stay on Mary's Mini for a lifetime? Sure, why not? It has all the food you need: sweet potatoes, broccoli, white potatoes, different greens. I mean, you could even just eat potatoes, and you wouldn't even need to have anything. You could have a whole plate of potatoes.
I gave this 4-hour lecture to you folks on potatoes, probably 8 months ago. And I pointed out to you that our populations of hundreds of thousands of people have lived on potatoes alone. There have been metabolic ward experiments. I just told you about one, but there have been others too, where they raise people on potatoes alone. The Kempner diet, which I talk about a lot, is the rice diet. It's based on rice, fruit juice, and simple sugar. That's a Mary's Mini diet that is really adequate and good nutrition. So you can stay on the diet forever as far as you're concerned. And I use this diet as a tool, sort of. I kind of do it without thinking about it. I have people who come into the program who are, in big trouble. Sometimes they're not in just big trouble. They just want to get well really, really quick. But they didn't understand all the things that we had to say during the program. They're overwhelmed by their treatments and that they had to go through it. And regardless, at the end of the program, they say,
or they don't like to cook.
Yeah, that's right. And I say to somebody like this, look, until you figure out different foods and different means of eating, just live on sweet potatoes and water. You'll be fine for the next 4 months, 6 months or so. Yes, you can live on the diet for a lifetime.
Should I leave the table hungry?
Never. We don't believe in
because if you're hungry, then, you could leave the table hungry and then an hour later, be hungry again and then eat some more. So, it's not like we are limiting the amount of food you can eat. When you're hungry, you eat. So you eat until you're full. And then if you're full, you can leave the table and then go back an hour later and have some more.
I would tell them all, if they leave the table on Mary's mini diet, just realize it's a diet. And if you want it to be a lifetime thing, increase the amount of starch.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's diet.
Yeah. I think you answered this pretty adequately, but I'd like you to give you a chance to say it one more time.
Can I eat a different starch every day?
Yeah.
No. One starch.
How about spaghetti? How about if I pick spaghetti? How about I pick wheat, like bread and pasta and pizza crusts? And
Well, that's refined.
oh,
So that doesn't really fit into the
Mary's mini.
rules of the Mary's Mini. So I would say no.
All right. So
That would not be your choice.
we can't make Mary's mini around refined wheat or grain or rice or et cetera. You have to eat them in whole food.
And
That's the
people
menu.
ask if they can eat spaghetti with marinara sauce. Well, if you ate spaghetti, you'd have to eat spaghetti for every meal for 10 days. And the marinara sauce would be a condiment. It wouldn't be the sauce that you choose to put on there. You'd have to make it yourself because you can't buy marinara sauce that's oil-free and sugar-free that I know of.
Uh-huh.
And so, and you only can use a little bit. A condiment is meant to be a small amount, like a little bit of the balsamic vinegar, a little bit of seasoning that you put on your food. So I would say no.
One redeeming thing about those kind of noodles, pasta noodles and even macaroni noodles, spaghetti noodles, is that you cook them in water. And as a result, the product gains water, which has no calories. So it causes the original flour to be diluted considerably. Now, when it comes to bread, you take the water away, and it's a relatively dry form of refined grains. So, even though they say bread is not so good as far as weight loss, there's an experiment maybe we can talk about later that they did at Michigan State University. I'm not going to bog us down with that now. How about beans, peas, and lentils for your starch?
Beans, peas, and lentils would be too high in protein to eat for 3 meals a day for 10 days or longer, I would think.
There are societies throughout history that have lived as part of their diet on these legumes. I don't really know of any that lived on legumes.
Only legumes, yeah.
It's primary source. It's been rice, corn, potatoes, those type of things that millions of people have lived on. We did the squash thing. How about, let's see, how many times a day can I eat and what time of the day?
You can eat as often as you want. That's what's really nice, is whenever you're hungry, as long as you're choosing the right starch, have as many as you want. If it takes you, like AJ, if it takes you 20 potatoes a day to be satisfied and not hungry, go for it.
That scares people. I think of 20
And
potatoes
20
a day.
potatoes a
I used to
day.
have people come to my office who had eating disorders. And they say, you don't understand me. You don't understand my problem. I've got this eating disorder problem. And not to minimize a person's emotional difficulties or mental difficulties, but I would always say, okay, I'm going to put a bushel basket full of baked potatoes in front of you. Eat. No one would ever take me up on the challenge because they realize how silly that would be in terms of,
But if you spread it out throughout the whole day, it might work.
I know. But I got to challenge these people who say I'm wrong, who say
Okay.
that I have an eating disorder, and that way I could eat a bushel basket full of potatoes. I can do that.
And they never could.
They never could, no. Let me answer the next couple of questions. Do I need professional medical supervision? The answer is, if you're sick, you do. If you're on blood pressure pills, diabetes pills, you need to have somebody help you get off of them, somebody who knows about medication. And of course, that's one of the real advantages to the 12-day McDougall program that we run over the internet, is we have a doctor who works with you right from the beginning, right from your history and physical examination to your follow-up visits to your summary examination. You have medical care for the entire 12 days and afterwards.
Afterwards, we follow up with them every 2 weeks.
How often should you monitor your weight? Maybe once a week, maybe once a month.
Yeah.
But certainly not every day because,
no, I would say once a week. But I mean, I never weigh myself at least not more than once a month.
Yeah. What happens is people get their emotions are caused by the moment. And so one day when they gain a half a pound, and we used to see this in the live-in program a lot, they gain a half a pound, say they ate some extra salt or didn't have a bowel movement, or or they had their menstrual period, women, when they had their menstrual period, and they gain an extra half a pound or a pound, the whole day would be ruined.
I was going to say the whole day would be ruined.
And this is water weight gain. It's going to go away. So, once a week's plenty. Any blood tests? Well, we get routine blood tests on our patients. And there are simple things you ought to know, like your thyroid function, whether or not you have anemia, which is a CBC, and a basic metabolic panel that will tell you about your cholesterol and your blood sugar. Those are the kind of tests you ought to do if you're worried about it. If you're not sick, you're not on medication, you're otherwise in good health, the answer is no, you don't need to see a physician. All right, coffee, tea, and alcohol, they're not a part of any of our programs, so we'll just skip that. We don't serve any diets.
No, we can't skip that.
All right, go ahead. Well, those are bad habits.
Well, I know they're bad habits, but people like to have a cup of coffee in the morning or some tea in the morning. And as long as it's black coffee or plain black tea without any non-dairy milk or creamer added to it, because that would be not part of Mary's Mini. This would be just black coffee or non-caffeinated tea or herbal teas. People like that in the morning to just kind of feel like morning. But alcohol, I would say no.
A little alcohol and one potato chips becomes 2 bags. You lose your inhibitions. That's one of the problems. Alcohol does not turn into fat. I just want you to know that. But alcohol does have calories that your body prefers to burn alcohol as opposed to fat. So it'll burn off the alcohol that you consume and leave your body fat intact. But alcohol does not turn into fat molecules. Alcohol relieves inhibitions, and I think that's the biggest problem.
But I would still say that for Mary's Mini, there would be no alcohol.
Absolutely. I just want to add one thing, and that is that when I published the book, the McDougall Program, 12 Days to Dynamic Health, back in 1990, when I was providing manuscripts that were quite early in the process, my editors came back to me and said, look, this business about how if you drink caffeinated beverages, you'll lose weight faster, because caffeinated beverages increase your metabolic rate. I said, yeah, I want people to know everything. This is I think it was the Maximum Weight Loss book that I put this in. Either one, doesn't matter. And so anyways, they told me to take it out of the book. You're a health food doctor, and they were right. I shouldn't have mixed up coffee, as a way to lose weight more. The negative effects of coffee are significant enough that you ought to choose it carefully.
Yes.
And not you can't eat it, but you ought to choose it carefully. And same thing with diet drinks. We don't recommend them.
No, but there are a lot of varieties of seltzer water that just have flavor added to them and no sugar and no artificial sugars. And I would say those would be okay.
All right. Can they do this as a part-time, Mary?
Of course.
It's a diet.
It's a diet.
Yeah. You do it part-time. All right. We may have shared with you more than we expected to, but
that was fabulous. But even so, we still have so many questions in the chat. Would you mind me asking a few questions?
We'd love to. It's just that.
Yeah, I just want to show you. I got another diet book that tells me to eat blue cheese stuffed chicken breasts.
Yeah.
All right, sounds great.
You can find anything to make you happy, but you can't find anything that matches everything that you see in the world. You can't find. There's only one program you will be able to come up with if you look at the worldwide picture of the human diet. As I said, almost everybody that's ever lived on this planet has lived on a starch-based diet. If you read the scientific literature, you can't be confused. But unfortunately, because there's a big customer base out there that's desperate to lose weight, and they're never told a simple solution, just eat like people who are trim. There's so much, there's room for quacks. There's room for gimmicks. We got a gimmick.
Well,
we got a gimmick. We got a gimmick.
Monotony.
People were not liking that height weight chart you showed because they said they would look sickly at those weights. But doesn't it, like if people have a lot of muscle, they might weigh more, and it doesn't mean the number is not that important, right?
Well, I think that the reason that we put it there is because it's not that should be a goal for people to get to. It's just that sometimes people get too thin,
or they think
they're too thin, and then we can say, look, this is what Dr. Kempner recommended. So you're not too thin. And if you want to gain weight, you know how to do it just by adding some more high-fat plant foods.
Your actuary tables are made based upon population studied. So when you study the American population, you come up with body weights that are large. Why do you think they come up with large body weights as being normal? So you want to look at a chart that was put together by somebody who understood excellent health. And Walter Kempner presented a chart that I think is very reasonable to tell you you're not losing too much weight. Now, I've stated on that slide, I want to reemphasize for you again, is if you're losing too much weight, just go back to the McDougall program. Just add nuts and seeds. There are a whole bunch of people out there pushing nuts and seeds on you. You know, they gain all the way you want. I can make you as big as you want to be.
Do you think that it's because there's so few people of normal weight now that we've just developed a worldview, and when we see people that are of normal weight, they look odd to us?
Well, not to me though, AJ. I do know exactly what you mean. I think the general population has gotten to the point where being overweight and obese is acceptable. You see your advertisements on TV, the models that they use are often overweight. But when I walk through a shopping mall, or just walk down the street, I see about 80% of people in the mid-years of life being overweight. 40% of the kids are overweight or obese. So yeah, it's become the normal, but not from my point of view. I guess I'm too old. I remember as a kid going to grade school that if we had one overweight student every other year, that was a big deal and they got ridiculed. Now we're in a situation where 40% of the people, the kids, are overweight. Yeah, it may be acceptable, but it's still not right. And if they had a real choice, I have to believe that people would choose poor health, certainly between breast cancer and heart disease and diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis. They would choose a healthy diet. You know, maybe being thin is not ideal. There was a time in history, like in the 1800s in Europe, when overweight women were considered to be attractive. That's because the bulk of the population in Europe was starving. So it made a statement when you were overweight that you were rich and privileged. I don't think I need that kind of support to tell me I'm rich and fortunate. I don't need to be overweight to look like a king and a queen. If you're tired of looking like a king and a queen.
Dr. McDougall, I don't think I've ever seen a photo of you overweight. Do you have any?
Probably not.
Well, how about a wedding picture?
We don't have our wedding picture anymore.
We got burned up in the fire.
all the pictures that we had, I had an actual picture of him in a swimsuit holding Heather when she was a baby, and that's gone. So I don't have it anymore. So that's good because nobody will ever see it.
Well, when I married, Mary did not marry me for my good looks. She married me.
No, but you were really handsome. There was a picture of you that you'd use in a slideshow where you had your shirt off and there was a cat. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I got that picture. Yeah. I can show it to you. Actually.
You were really, really handsome, Dr. McDougall.
Well, I can show you that picture, and I can show you another picture I did when I interviewed Roy Swank, and I probably look about 10 to 15 pounds heavier there too. Yeah, I've gone through my phases.
Yeah, you've been thin. A lot of times it was just a certain portion of our lives.
Well, it was mainly when I was traveling a lot. I used to be on the road 1 to 2 months a month doing TV and radio shows and that kind of traveling. You know, it takes a toll on you for all kinds of reasons.
You know, here's a great comment from Bullion. How can the industry make money on thin people? They can't. They make money selling them diet programs that don't work and then fattening them up with foods that make them sick.
Yeah. I like that.
You know, Dr. McDougall, there's a comment from Barbara asking you to run for president to get this climate thing in order. I said I would ask.
I'm open for the post of Surgeon General. I could be appointed.
Oh, boy, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I've been waiting a long time to be appointed. And you know, the thing is as I've stated so correctly, is my tenure of service will last about 24 hours, because at least somebody from the food or the drug or the medicine industries will assassinate me.
Hey,
Nobody, you can understand the implication, just like this the caller is asking, is what would happen if people really understood good health? You'd put 80% of the hospitals out of business. Grocery stores would be really simplified. We could fly people around. We could make airplanes with more seats. As it now, you got the people are a third overweight, and so 1/3 more people could fly on a single. It would be wonderful for the environment.
Yeah.
So I have to thank Kelly for her super chat donation, moves her questions to the top of the fray. And she said she had the gastric sleeve. Can she still do your program?
Yes, you can. Okay. Gastric sleeves or even gastric bypass operations. So there's a guy named Mike Wilson, who you can read about on our website under Star McDougall. It's Mike Wilson, who started out at like 450 pounds. And he went through a gastric resection, a Roux-en-Y procedure, really the most dramatic of all procedures. And he still couldn't lose the weight. And then he discovered a starch-based diet, and boy, he'd lose it rapidly. Mike Wilson's his name. So we've had quite a few people who have been through various procedures, the most radical being the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. The sleeve is minor compared to that surgery. And the question that comes up with these people who have been through these procedures is, am I now going to be nutritionally deficient? Do I have to take the vitamin pills prescribed to me? Or can I go on a vegetable diet because it doesn't have all the necessary nutrients, meaning protein and calcium, which is complete nonsense. You need to understand whether you've had rearrangement of your intestine or whether it's the way that God put it there. You need to understand that the McDougall diet, the kind of diet I recommend, is the most nutrient dense of all diets. Unless you believe protein and calcium are essential nutrients, since there's never been a case of either ever reported in the world literature. I doubt it. But vitamin C, you got it. You understand. The fruits and vegetables are full of true nutrients that you need, not the nonsense that the meat and dairy industry teach you.
Wow. So Mary, there's a question. Can popcorn be the starch on Mary's Mini? I don't know how you could eat popcorn.
Let's say yes.
No.
Why
popcorn,
not?
But popcorn could be a snack on Mary's Mini.
Why couldn't it be a starch? I mean,
Well,
if it's corn, it's just big and fluffy.
You'd have to eat popcorn 3 times a day.
And you'd have to
But isn't it, Dr. McDougall, isn't it a higher caloric density because there's no water?
That would be part of it, but it's not refined.
No, it's not refined.
I would have to look up the calorie content of.
Yeah.
The way I would do it is look up the number of calories per gram that.
Well, it could be if you had corn meal for breakfast, like oatmeal.
Yeah.
And then you had popcorn for lunch.
But then the cornmeal's refined. That's
Cornmeal's refined. But then you had a big bowl of corn kernels for dinner. But then you have to do that every day.
You know,
it's 4 calories per gram. I looked it up. It says it's 4 calories per gram.
Well, you know what? At 4 calories per gram, if you need 2,500 calories per day, you better start eating long before this show started.
It's a lot of popcorn.
Yeah. So Mary votes no, but I vote yes.
You vote yes. All right.
So again, I want to make sure that you're not picking up on some inconsistencies that we're trying to tell you, where you see some refined products in the sense of corn tortillas or spaghetti pasta and so on that we recommend. We're telling you as you refine it to the maximum weight loss program, you eliminate these refined foods. And then when we further go on, we're going to take all the advantages of the maximum weight loss program. When you further refine it, we're going to restrict things even further, like the nuts and seeds and avocado, which are already banished from the weight loss program. And we're going to further restrict the refined foods, and we're going to increase the vegetables. And Mary's going to make you eat the same darn thing all day long. But we joke about this, but it's not a joke. I mean, it's a tool. And again, it's a tool that's practiced by 99.9% of the people that's walked this earth. No society had supermarkets up until recently. You know,
Dr. McDougall, have you ever heard of Josh LaJohny? He's a man that used to weigh over 400 pounds, and he found this way of eating, and now he's like,
Johnny Cool, wasn't that Johnny?
right. Well, what's really cool, one thing he said to me, because when you mentioned gastric bypass mechanically makes the stomach smaller so you feel full. But with the McDougall program, instead of making the stomach smaller, he says you're making the food bigger.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, he had a quite dramatic story. I haven't heard from him in a long time. I don't even know if we have him on our website again, but I would look. I think he calls himself Johnny Cool, right?
Well, I'm not sure if we have the same person, Josh LaJohny from New Orleans, and he's
yeah,
really,
I think that's him. I think that he kind of changed his name to protect.
okay. Well, he's really cool for what he's done. So what I'm seeing in the chat is Elizabeth says, but can we have 1 tablespoon of flaxseed a day?
You're over 21.
Why would you want
You're
to?
free.
Because they say if we don't eat nuts and seeds, we're going to drop dead and have dementia and strokes. You know that.
That's silly talk, not based on science. So again,
there's a lot of people that believe it. And
but AJ, just look at some common sense. I mean, you've got to consider human nutrition has been tremendously compromised. Think about, we were watching a movie last night about the concentration camps in World War II. About the Jews that were, put in these concentration camps and other people, political prisoners. What do they live on? The human being is a survivor. Take a look at the populations of people like the Asian, the Japanese, the Chinese, or the ones that were in Central America. They lived on corn. They didn't develop any deficiencies. And people come back and they say, well, there's a special kind of fat you need. What you need is DHA. You need first of all, you need essential fat, which is alpha linoleic acid. And then you need the conversion of alpha linoleic acid to eicosapentaenoic acid. And then you need that converted to DHA. And they say, well, you got to eat fish to get all this stuff. Well, tell me, ladies and gentlemen, how did all the terrestrial bound populations survive if you needed fish? They survive. They got all the fat, all the essential fat that they possibly needed from the plants. You cannot design a fatty acid deficient diet. In the lecture that I will give probably in the next week or two on fat, I explained to you that the only cases of fatty acid deficiency described, well, the first case that I'm aware of was described in 1928 when they took a whole bunch of infants. They were developing infant formulas at that time. They took a whole bunch of infants and they put them on different formulas, infant formulas that had different fat contents. And what they found was that when they made the diet fat-free, in other words, skim milk they fed these babies, is they developed dryness in their skin and some lesions on their lips. And you had to go to that kind of extreme to making a synthetic diet, which was artificially fat-free, to get people to develop fatty acid deficiency. The other thing I point out is that when I was a young doctor, we used to take people who had lost their intestinal tract, say from Crohn's disease or other malalignments of their body, and so they've lost their intestinal tract, so they at least temporarily can't be fed through the gut, and we would attach them to an IV, give them all the protein and all the carbohydrates and all the vitamins they wanted through the IV, but we couldn't get fat. Fat just didn't fit into the system. It clogged everything up. So what we used to do is take a cloth and rub a little bit of safflower oil on their skin. And that would be enough fat for them to absorb to meet their fatty acid needs. Yeah, just the science is being told incorrectly. I don't know. It's a lot of people who like fat for one reason. I'll tell you the other thing that bothers me, AJ, is that and we've talked about this before, is the new diet theories that come out don't rely upon the pioneers, upon the basic researchers, which is one thing that I hope I get credit for, is that I stand on the shoulders of 4 mentors who came out and changed the world, each one of them. And they are...
I know Roy Swank, Nathan Pritikin, Walter Kempner, and
Dennis Burkett.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, this has been going on a long time. There are too many people out there with new variations of this diet or that diet or so on that don't rely upon old knowledge. Old knowledge is still true. Unless you can justify what you're recommending based upon the phenomenal results that Walter Kempner got with a diet of rice, fruit juice, and sugar, unless you can explain that and why it's wrong, then all the nonsense you're adding and confusing people with and resulting in less good health, it can't be justified. So you look at, and by the way, we have on our website, I have a lot of articles about Walter Kempner and things that I've talked about. We just put up Walter Kempner's basic research. I got a hold of a copy of his research, 1,000 pages, and I put it up for you on our website. So you can read the research he did with Otto Warburg in Germany before he came to Duke University in 1934. You can read his research in English that he did at Duke University since 1934. Until anybody interested in diet can understand and communicate to you why the Kempner diet is wrong, I think this is just a gimmick. They're trying to sell you a book. God talked into my left ear and told me the secret. Come and buy my book.
Wouldn't it be? I wish Dr. Kempner was alive and he could come on the show, because we have some people watching now that are diabetics, type 2 diabetics, that are saying that when they eat starch like rice or potatoes, their blood sugar spikes.
Well, it does. So when you're supposed to eat, when you eat, your blood sugar goes up. It's supposed to. Okay. But the Kempner diet, they got the same results as we get today, which are 100% of people who have type 2 diabetes are cured with the kind of diet recommended. Kempner found the same thing. Type 2 diabetes, not type 1, type 2. Kempner diet is 93% sugar. Excuse me. And he cured his, and if you understand the basic metabolism, physiology, and science behind type 2 diabetes, then you'd understand why. Fat paralyzes insulin, whether you're type 1 or type 2 diabetic. It makes the insulin work less efficiently. So when you take them off the fat, the insulin starts working really good. And the more sugar you add, the better the insulin works. That's what the science says, ladies and gentlemen. And you can't be lazy about this. You've got to learn the science. Anyway, just challenge the next guest you have that says you can't live on the kind of diet that I recommend because it's too low in fat, too low in protein, et cetera, et cetera. You just say, hey, how about the Kempner diet? How about a diet?
They probably don't even know what that is.
Well, they should if they're in the business. What about Walter Kempner's work? 7 decades at Duke University. For 2 decades, the rice diet supported Duke University. Excuse me, this is a classic. Anyway, that's what I would do. Is I just say, okay, you say it doesn't work. How come the Walter Kempner diet on rice, fruit juice, and simple sugar supplied all the fatty acids?
Is anyone doing that diet right now anywhere, either in clinical trials or just as a treatment for diabetes?
Well, I do.
No, but I mean, exactly. I know what you mean, but like the way he did it with just.
No, well, they actually Rosati and Francis Nealon, Robert Rosati and Francis Nealon were his proteges. And they, after Kempner died, they continued to work at Duke University for another maybe 15, 20 years. And finally, Duke decided they had no room for them. And so they stopped. And both Frank Nealon and Robert Rosati are retired now. But if you want to see interviews done by Frank Nealon and Robert Rosati, who were the 2 men who worked side by side by Kempner, they were willing to do videos with me, which I recorded, which you'll find in my December 2013 newsletter. You can watch these 2 men describe their hero, the man that they learned so much from, which is Walter Kempner.
Dr. McDougall, people are asking if you guys ever eat nuts and seeds, like if you go out, and how much fat do you recommend per day?
It depends on whether you want more fat to wear. Because AJ, that's the destiny of the fat. Plan on it. You put a tablespoon of olive oil on your salad, it goes to your buttocks and thigh and abdomen. What do you think it's supposed to do? Your body doesn't want to burn fat. Do you remember glycolysis? That's what your high school biology taught you about basic metabolism of the human being, glycolysis. It's not lipolysis, that's fat. It's glycolysis, which is sugar.
Yeah. But you can't, but people still don't believe about de novo lipogenesis, that because they say, well, potatoes make you fat, they turn to sugar, but doesn't everything turn to sugar that you eat?
And they're not reading the science.
I know.
And that's the problem. I hear people make all these statements, like, for example, in the fat talk that I'm giving, or I was considering to put it in here. I actually made up a slide. Mary objected to it because it was too busy to slide, which listed 7 papers. They're the basic papers showing the fat you eat is the fat you wear, showing where they take people, they did a study on Japanese people and the amount of fish that they ate. And they took biopsies of their body fat and correlated that with the amount of fish that they ate. When they ate a lot of fish, they were full of omega-3 fats. Study after study after study. You won't show me a study that says otherwise. By discounting the basic research, you don't get to win. You don't get to say that what happened in the previous times is untrue. Truth existed for a long time.
Yep. So people are saying, but aren't you worried about potatoes being high glycemic and arsenic in rice? People worry about the darndest things.
Let's deal with both at the same time. Or no, let's deal them separately. This rice thing and arsenic is one of those things where people read that article and they go, "There's nothing safe to eat." Plants and I heard meat has salmonella in it, and dairy has listeria in it, and they're all high on the food chain, so they're full of environmental pesticides. And now they tell me I can't eat rice. Well, that's based upon the discovery by Consumers Reports that there's a high content of arsenic in rice. Well, a year earlier, they'd published an article on the content of arsenic in juice. And they found that juice had more arsenic than rice, but it doesn't matter. Rice got everybody's attention. The way it turns out is that the reason arsenic has rice is because it accumulates arsenic from the soil. It had to get there in the first place. Rice grown on, say, the Louisiana cotton plantations is the rice that's full of arsenic. In other words, back when they were growing cotton, they used to put arsenic to kill the boll weevil. So contaminated soils is the problem. You grow anything. In fact, I have to tell you, hyperaccumulators, they really suck up those poisons. Your hyperaccumulators are your cruciferous vegetables, like your broccoli. They really know how to concentrate these poisons. Anyway, let's go on. What was the other one about?
Potatoes are so high glycemic.
The glycemic index was the story I want to tell you here. David Jenkins invented the glycemic index. He's a friend of mine. Back in 1882, he published his first article. And I saw David, we had him recently at one of our advanced study weekends, and I asked him the same question that I asked him 30 years ago. I said, David, what's the relevance of this? What's the importance of this glycemic index? He says, I don't know, just one description of the food. You see, there's lots of ways to talk about food, like the amount of fiber, the amount of carbohydrate, the amount of fat. Also, one characteristic of food is raising the blood sugar, which is the glycemic index. What is the reason for eating? It's to raise the blood sugar. It's supposed to go up. So what they did at David Jenkins is he set up these experiments where he measured the blood sugar levels and insulin levels of various subjects, and he would feed them as a standard white sugar or white bread. They calculated on either one of them as the standard. And then they saw the rise in the blood sugar compared to 100%. 100% is the standard white sugar. The rise in blood sugar compared to white sugar. Well, potatoes are 118%. Snickers bars are 67%. That's because fructose has a glycemic index of 20. So do you think fructose is good for you? You want to damage your arteries. If I had to pick a sugar, it would be fructose. Fructose is the same number of calories as glucose, so make you just as fat. So, the glycemic index describes one quality of a food, nothing detrimental. Endurance athletes these days, they're picking high glycemic index foods because they realize they've got to get that sugar back into their system to raise the glycogen in their muscles and liver for the next race. You're supposed to eat. You're supposed to take in calories, and those calories are supposed to be from sugar, but not sugar like table sugar, sugar like potatoes and rice and corn and those little sweet potatoes, AJ.
Dr. McDougall, have you ever heard of Susanna Holt, who created the satiety index, who said that the potato, I'd love to find her and interview her because she says the potato is the most satiating food you could eat.
I think her research came out in the 80s. Yeah, I have both of her articles, one on satiety and the other, I forget. But anyway, Susan Holt. What she did is she compared, same type of thing. She asked people how satisfied they felt based upon eating different foods. And she found that potatoes were 2 to 3 times as satisfying as meat and cheese, and 7 times as satisfying as croissants. So yeah, I know Susan Holt, her work really well. I don't think you're going to get her. I suspect she's retired.
Darn. Dr. McDougall, there is a question of people with IBS. They say that when they eat certain starches, they don't feel well, bloated. Can a person with IBS still do this program?
Absolutely. In fact, you need to do it if you want to be cured. It only makes sense what you put in your intestinal tract determines its health or sickness.
Well, wouldn't the Mary's Mini be really good for something like that? You could pick one starch and one vegetable and just do it like a elimination diet.
It could, but then what if they start thin already? Some of these people with IBS are thin. I think, yeah. Anyway, it only makes sense of what you put in the bowel. It has to cause it to feel good or feel bad. In fact, immediately you get an indigestion, and later on you feel a constipation. So, I mean, let's start from some common sense. What you put in your intestinal tract has to determine its health or sickness. Now, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, has a spectrum from diarrhea to severe constipation and lots of pain and cramps in between. But that's how doctors talk about IBS. It could be frequent diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome. There's something wrong with the bowels, and it's not really descriptive as to what the quality is, diarrhea or constipation or pain or cramps or something. Let me give you the extremes. Anybody who follows the McDougall diet will notice that they have to buy extra toilet paper. And when we used to run the clinic at up in Santa Rosa, the hotel that we had the resort we had our clinic at used to order extra toilet paper when they knew our patients were coming in. You should expect immediate relief from that kind of irritable bowel syndrome when you change your diet. Work done by Andreessen, which was published in 1972 in the journal Gut. I want to read this stuff. You want to read Andreessen. Of course, we provide all those scientific papers for you when you get involved with us. Andreessen took people with chronic diarrhea. They had Crohn's disease or some type of damage to the ileum, and they weren't able to absorb the bile acids that were made in the liver. So the bile acids escaped into their large intestine, and because they're irritating, they gave them 20 or more watery stools a day. They're tied to their bathroom. And he put them on a low-fat diet. And what happened was in 48 hours, they were having 2 to 3 foreign bowel movements a day. I see a lot of people who come in and they think I'm joking when they say, look, I've got to get some change in my life. I haven't been in a meeting in 2 years. I have my computer, my TV in the bathroom. You know, I can't get on an airplane. And I say something simple like, McDougall diet will fix that. And they get, well, you treat my problem so lightly because it's so simple. Anyway, there's some minor variations you may want to make in the diet, like there's the gluten issue for those rare people who have gluten problems, like about 1 in 100, 1 in 250, not 40% of the consumer market like you would believe. Anyway, try it, see it. The nice thing about what we recommend is you get benefits in 4 to 7 days.
Right. Well, I've been posting the link if people want to register for next month's McDougall program, because I know you have just a few spots left. And Lisa says, how long should we do Mary's Mini for? 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks?
Well, it was originally set up to be for 10 days. So, but people could choose 7 days, or they could choose 5 days, or they could choose 15 days. So whatever you feel like choosing, but it was originally set up to be a 10-day mini diet.
And you could model it.
You know what I was thinking is, I I know how you feel about the raw food diet. And somebody actually asked, what do you think about that? Like just doing juices as a cleanse. But when I had Dr. Doug Graham on, he like wanted us to all do a 10-day raw food challenge, which I think would be very daunting. But a 10-day all potato challenge, like a Mary's Mini, I would do that with the group. I don't mind. I'll just eat sweet potatoes, broccoli every day. I can do that. I already know how to already do it. So if people need my support, we could do that together.
Well, I'd like to do a survey to determine how long you should be on the mini diet. And what the survey I'd ask is, how long did you stay on the painful portion control programs? How long could you stand out to be in hunger? You know, most of the weak people like me could only take it for a few days. And then I'd ask you, well, how long did you stay on the make yourself sick diets? You know, like the Atkins diet or the variations that have followed afterwards. They make you sick. That's why you lose weight. How long do you feel like you could stay sick? 10 days. Let's just go 10 days. Most of us are tough enough to be in hunger or sick for 10 days. You can do that. You know, we kind of joke, but there's a lot. I don't want people to think that we don't take this very sincerely. I guess the examples we're trying to show you is you think the basic McDougall diet is effective and difficult.
Yeah. Well, then when they're done, they can go back to it, and it's like then they'll really appreciate how wonderful it is.
We have people say that all the time to us, AJ, is that if I want to cheat, and there is some value in cheating, somehow people like to be cheat and feel guilty. If there's a need for guilt, then you can cheat on the mini diet or the maximum weight loss program. You go back to the regular McDougall diet. So satisfies all your needs.
It's almost like there's 3 levels. That's like, you know, like gold, silver, and bronze in a way.
And then we could do a raw food diet. Okay, the raw food diet for.
You know, it's weird, Dr. McDougall, because I always tell people, do the least restrictive program you can do that will get you the results you seek. Yeah. But there are some people that seem to be doing it successfully and they love it. So who am I to tell them no?
Well, I just want to comment on raw food. There's very few starches can you eat raw. Maybe potatoes. Certainly not rice or corn or wheat.
Yeah, very tasty though.
They're not, but if you put enough salt on them and chew them really hard, you can get them down. So you're not going to do a starch-based diet and a raw food diet. So what are you left with? You're left with fruits and vegetables, which are healthy, and you're left with nuts and seeds, which are fattening. Not unhealthy, but fattening. So, and besides that, no one's ever, as far as I know, historically, has ever followed a raw food diet. There's a Dr. Richard Wrangham from Harvard, who's a very famous guy. He wrote a
I just had his student Herman Poncer on the show who wrote Burn. He's trying to get him for me on the show, but he's retired. But I love where you're going.
He's a great man. And Robert Wrangham, he tells us that part of the reason we're human beings is because of the development of fire. You know, fire allowed us enough calories so we could develop the brain that we have and to, you know, power our activities. And cooking releases calories. So yeah, you're going to lose more weight on a raw food diet, but you're not going to sustain it. Nobody ever has. They haven't for a million years. Let's just say a million. I won't get any argument. Let's just say a million. But that was Wrangham's theory. He's a great guest.
I would love to have him.
Raw food diets. I've heard about people juice their food because it makes it easier to eat. You can't sit there and chew 11,
and you get more calories.
11 pounds of cabbage.
And as I showed you in Haber's work about the apple being turned into applesauce and juice, you know, you start damaging the food. You hit it 1,000 times with a steel blade. Yes, it releases more calories. But I thought you went on a diet to get rid of calories. You know, so the more you damage the food, the less likely it is to give you the results you're looking for. Can I drink juice? Absolutely. You know, if you're in your relatively good health, why not? I mean, the body is tough. Puts up with 2 packs of cigarettes, a half a bottle of whiskey, and bacon wrapped around hot dogs. I know. I know that. I've tested it. So,
Richard,
a little juice ain't going to kill you.
Richard, who is watching live, says he's a recovering type 2 diabetic and wants to know, is it okay to eat Ezekiel bread? It has about 5 grams of fat per slice.
Well, Ezekiel bread is slow cooked. Wayfarer's bread. They bake it in an oven very slowly, and the result is that it tastes sweet. The reason it tastes sweet is because you break down the complex sugars into simple sugars by slow heating. So it's going to be sweet. It's going to be more enjoyable. You're more likely to eat it. That's all good. But the reason it tastes sweet is because it releases more simple sugar. Can a type 2 diabetic eat it? Probably. I don't think it'd be. Yes, definitely. Even a type 1 diabetic in the 2013 issue of Diabetes Care, there's an article of on type 1 diabetics. And they added fats and oils to the diet of a type 1 diabetic, and it dramatically increased their insulin needs. Fat paralyzes insulin. I told you about Walter Kempner and how 93% of his diet's sugar. Ezekiel Brett ain't even close to that. And work done by Brunzell at the University of Washington, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. They took type 2 diabetics. And by the way, you can find all of this on the website or when I give the lecture on, or lectures I've given on diabetes, things I've written about. What Brunzell and his group did at the University of Washington is they took type 2 diabetics and they fed them sugar solutions, okay? Maltodextrin and table sugar. And what they did when they made a diet that was 45% sugar, and then they increased the sugar content. These are simple sugars to 85% of the calories. This is an experiment done, okay? And what they found is every aspect of their diabetes improved when they doubled the sugar content. Lower insulin levels, lower fasting blood sugars, lower 24-hour blood sugars. You can look it up, Brunzell, University of Washington. Just look up Brunzell and insulin. Probably that will give it to you.
Great, thank you. Oh, I just saw, oh yes, a couple of people asked, what do you think about the idea of batch cooking potatoes and refrigerating them? Something about changing the resistant starch, is that beneficial?
Ain't no big deal. It's just like eating raw potatoes is going to give you fewer calories because you're not going to eat as much. It's not just as much digestible. The problem, it's not a lot of damage that's done to food by cooking it. People argue, well, raw food is it's the most natural of all the foods. Well, you know, maybe if you're an ape or a chimpanzee, it's your natural of all foods. You don't have a kitchen, but human beings are different, and it's not our natural diet. Our natural diet is cooked food. And as far as storing it and producing more simple sugars, I didn't quite catch the guidance on there. If you store it away, is the potatoes worse for you? As long as they stay fresh, no. As long as they're not spoiled.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't think so.
Is there anything more about that question that we should answer?
Richard, if you're still there, please do a follow-up. And, you know, Dr. McDougall, I never want to make my guest, whoever they are, feel uncomfortable or argue with them. But last week I had, and this wasn't that I was going to argue with him, but I had a question that I didn't understand for Herman Ponsner, who wrote The Exercise Paradox in Bern, because he actually lived with the Hadzas, you know, one of the last hunter-gathering tribes in the world. There's about 1,000 of them. And he says that none of them have diabetes or heart disease. And they eat meat. They eat the meat that they kill. Obviously, they're eating a lot of tubers, but how is, I don't think they're eating oil, but how is it that they don't have heart disease or diabetes or obesity? It just doesn't happen in a natural setting.
Because they're very active. Their diet is very unprocessed. And the amount of meat they eat is relatively small compared to an American. Certainly the processed food they eat is small compared to an American. John Westerdahl, who's a close friend of mine and a dietitian, he studied the Hunzas and wrote a book about them. And he can give you all the details about the Hunza, but let me take you to an extreme. And they're trim people. There's no doubt about that. But there are only a few people. There are only a few Hunzas. I'm talking about 700,000 people. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the extremes. There are some populations that live on all animal food diets, like the Inuit Eskimo. But let's talk about even a further extreme than that. Let's talk about the I forgot. Never mind. If I think about it, I'll
like the blood people that eat blubber, for example.
blood, milk, and meat. What are they called?
The Maasai.
Maasai. Thank you very much.
Maasai.
Okay, the Maasai. Thank you. Good grief. There's one of those moments. And the Maasai Indian. He was studied by George Mann, and George Mann went down there to see, and by the way, he was sponsored by the Heart Association when he did it. He went down to study why they didn't have any clinical heart disease among the Maasai, because they live on a diet after age 13, when they go into puberty, they live on a diet of blood, milk, and meat. And everything we know says they could have heart disease, terrible heart disease. Well, these are sheep herders, and they walk, many miles every day tending their sheep, so they get a tremendous amount of exercise. They also play a kickball game, where in that game they may play at 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. They're very physically active people. So George Mann, he went back. He says, this doesn't sound right. And then he came back and reported his findings in the New England Journal of Medicine, an article called Diet Heart, the End of an Era. Look it up, Diet Heart, End of an Era. And what George Mann described was the autopsy findings of these Maasai. And what he found is that at every age group, the Maasai had worse artery disease than Americans. It's just because of their physical activity, lack of smoking, et cetera, eating unprocessed food or eat with the rest of their diet. They compensated, but not from an autopsy level, but from a clinical level of not manifesting heart disease. Their arteries got so big. He also reports in there how big their arteries are, but he shows a thickness of atherosclerosis that's worse in the Maasai than Americans at any age. George Mann, Diet Heart, End of an Era in the New England Journal of Medicine. You'll find it. Just put those words in.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. But they definitely are not on a keto or a low carb diet, these tribes. They do eat a lot of tubers and starchy vegetables. The ones he described to me, he said they kind of have to suck the starch out. It was something that he couldn't really explain because we don't have it here, but it sounded kind of interesting.
Well, again, the human being is tough. Think about it, that's the Inuit Eskimo. Lives on a diet that really is all meat. They live on the Atkins diet for at least 7 months of the year. I'm talking about the traditional Inuit Eskimo. These are people who lived in ice huts and had to hunt and catch all their food. But what you'll find, and there's an article I wrote on the Inuit Eskimo, which is on our website, just put in Eskimo under the question section. And if you study the Inuit Eskimo, their average lifespan when they ate this kind of diet was 27 years of age. You could go back, there's a National Geographic article 1987, where they look at 2 women who were covered by an ice floe 500 years ago. They were entombed for 5 centuries. And they took these 2 women out of the ice floe, out of their graves, and they autopsied them. They found one woman was in her 20s, one was in her 40s. Both had severe osteoporosis and severe atherosclerosis. In other words, their arteries were severely damaged 500 years ago. So don't tell me that it's a modern phenomenon. And you'll find that also in other mummified remains, is that, you haven't escaped the rules, the basic rules. When you eat a diet that's wrong for people, you get sick. But the human being's a survivor. The Eskimo also has the worst incidence of osteoporosis in the world. In every age group, when the adult Eskimos' bone mineral density was measured, compared to Americans, they had 10% more bone loss from all that animal protein. Anyway, you want to find all the research on that. Probably the easiest thing to do is just pick up that newsletter I wrote.
Wow. Hey, if you guys are free in October, either the Mondays are October 4th or 11th, if you want to come back, people are saying they'd love to do a 7-day Mary Mini challenge, and I'll do it with them. But guys, I really only have one type, only one. I could probably do it for 7 days. I was, you don't know this, but in 2015, I was really sick from international travel. I had IBS and SIBO. I saw like 13 doctors. 8.5 months, I basically did Mary's Mini. I ate just sweet potatoes and zucchini, and I never really got tired of it. It was delicious.
People have the ability to make adjustments. We're very adaptable. What you need to do is find out what will cause you to look, feel, and function your best. And then you have to decide to do it. They call it willpower. But willpower fades quickly when you're on a diet that puts you in hunger, in the pain of hunger. Willpower fades quickly when you have to eat a diet that makes you sick. But if you eat foods that the human being was designed to eat, which populations of millions of people have consumed, the Mary Mini diet, then you're not doing anything abnormal. You're not doing anything weird. You're not doing anything that you get tired of. You get, as you said, you get satisfied. You can make the adjustment. It's worth it. Good grief, just for one more dinner with Mary, I would live on sweet potatoes for the rest of my life. Just one more chance to play with my grandchildren. You know, what is important in your life? Your hobbies, your occupation, your friends, your family. What are they worth? I think they're worth whatever program will keep you alive and feeling and functioning well as long as possible. And that's my philosophy in life. I want to do things that will cause me the most happiness, and part of that is quality of life, and part of it's longevity. Hopefully, it's part of its longevity.
Well,
there's a limit, AJ. We can get into that.
well said. This has been such a pleasure talking to both of you. You know, I just think we have to tell people you got to have starch, miles and miles and miles of starch. Stop being afraid of the potato, people. You will not get fat. Well, I hope you'll consider coming back in October for a challenge. That will be really fun.
Well, are we going to do a regular Monday until you?
Hey, you know, I would, if you want the first Monday or the second Monday of every month, we'll call it Monday.
Until your audience gets tired of the same old stuff.
They don't get tired of you, because when you guys are on, I get the most. I mean, there's like 5 doctors, and you get the top views, and you know, they're all the ones I love. You, Dr. Goldhammer, Dr. Lau, Dr. Furman, Dr. Greger, you guys, Dr. Barnard. Those are like the top 6. So,
you know, there's only one message, and we believe that's the truth. People have been following the McDougall diet, so to speak, for thousands of years. You know, the first chapter of Daniel in the Bible talks about how his men, when they went to a new kingdom that served meat and other rich foods, how his men, Daniel's men, who stayed on the diet of vegetables and water, were in much better health, had much better complexions, much stronger than those who continue to eat the royal food. Hey, it's right there in your Bible. It's been there for 2,600 years. It ought to be true, don't you think? Anyway, what I was trying to say is just for entertainment value, and you are so entertaining, AJ. Somebody could, you bring your personality, your guests, but you know, if Mary and I ever become a burden.
No way. People are loving it. Believe me. No, I get really nervous when you're on, though, because you always make me a little stressed. Like you always make me start right away and not be late and stuff. But it's so fun having you on. And I just can't wait. I mean, I would keep going, but my starches, my sweet potatoes are ready. I got to go eat, man.
And we always like a challenge. Yep. And we didn't get a chance to talk about some people's concern about the health benefits of potatoes, did we?
Well, how about next month? We have given them something to look forward to.
By then, will I have watched the seminar?
Yes, because I bought it today, and it's September 17th. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we should have a discussion about the value of a potato. And even the author of the idea that potatoes aren't an ideal food, which is what the seminar is about, I would even be happy to meet Dr. Greger on this show.
But it's possible that he's going to show that it is healthy. We don't know since he was.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We don't know. We don't know if he's bad. We don't know if that's why I bought it. We'll see what he has to say.
I hold this. You know, I said this based upon information.
Yeah, Dr. Greger is one of the top views, so he's in the 7. He's in the top 10. Yeah.
Dr. Greger is phenomenal.
He's amazing. He's hilarious.
But like everything, it should be, there's some disagreement. And my point is you could also be entertained by disagreements that were done in a friendly manner.
He said he would debate you next March or next spring after his book would come out on the 5 points that you said. But he said he wants to finish his book first. And it would be a friendly, very loving, kind debate.
He gave me a good excuse when he refused to debate me at one of our advanced study weekends. Again, Dr. Greger comes to every one of our weekends, one of our most valuable professional friends, but there's some entertainment and some education to be found here in any disagreement that we might have. And I always encourage Dr. Greger to do that.
Yeah, and I always tell people if this diet is working for you, do it, you know, but a lot of times what people are doing isn't working. So maybe switch it up a bit. And instead of the Daniel diet, we'll from now on call it the John and Mary diet.
You know, it's one thing to have disagreement. It's another thing to present facts appropriately in perspective. To take things out of context, to exaggerate or misrepresent the facts, it's not something that you ought to put up with.
Well, you're just going to.
I'm not speaking of Dr. Greger either. I'm trying to get a friendly challenge out here so we can do an entertaining and educational meeting. And there are about 5 different things that Dr. Greger and I'd like to talk to you about.
It'll be great, and I'd be happy to host it.
I got to wait a whole year. I'm ready.
Not a year. Well, he said spring, so maybe 6 months. You just have to outlive everybody so that people, so that that's the only way they're going to believe you that this is healthy. You got to really outlive them all.
How many points do I get for my age?
I don't. You're not that older, not much older than me. I'm following very quickly.
Come on, AJ, we got you by a decade and a half.
Oh, 15 years.
Yeah, that's older. 15 years is a big deal. You almost start driving a car when you're 15. By the next 15 years, you've married and you have a family. Another 15 years, you're thinking about retiring. We're a few more 15 years beyond that.
Yep.
We got 15 more years. That's it, if we're lucky.
No, don't say that, because you'll make it a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's going to be, AJ, for all of us, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You've heard the statement, nobody's ever got off this planet.
Right. But the thing is since we're destroying it at an unprecedented rate, we might not have a place to live in a few years.
That's right.
Well, we want to stay, that's Mary's, my goal is we want to stay as healthy as we can, primarily for each other. Wouldn't you say, Mary?
Yeah.
She's my best friend.
I know.
Has been for 45 years. And, I'm going to do everything I can to keep her healthy so that she can be around me and continue to be my friend and my main enjoyment in life. And I know she feels the same way about me.
Yeah. We hope so. Didn't your mom live to her hundreds, Dr. McDougall? I heard you say.
Well, my mother lived to be 93, and she smoked cigarettes, but she was a really moderate person, and she learned that from her grandmother, who her name was Old Mom. She lived to be 106. Old Mom, when I was growing up, she used to sew our clothes. She used to make me shirts and sew buttonholes and so on. And she did that till she was 106. When she got into her 90s, and I don't know that I knew her at that time, she got into her 90s. She suffered from hearing loss, and also she fractured both hips. And we didn't have the hip replacements that they had back then. So she was confined to a wheelchair. And as a result of those kinds of impairments in her life, she wasn't really that happy. And she used to say to me, she'd say, I don't know why God didn't take me last night. And she really had enough, but she made it to 106 years old, brain functioning fully. In fact, the last thing she heard was my mother went into her room and whispered in her ear, "Johnny named his son after your first husband." And she nodded and died.
That would be Craig, right?
That'd be Craig.
That'd be Craig. Yeah.
But there are a whole bunch of things I could share with you about Old Mom. But the point being is, there's a time for everything, and there's a time to die and to stop functioning. Nobody ever does anything different. Let's face it, facts. and there's also a quality of life that you want to have. There are people who have qualities of life out there that are so miserable they take their life at a young age. Maybe I don't understand it. Maybe you don't understand it, but it's common enough so a lot of people understand that sometimes life isn't worth living. What we want to do is make everybody's life worth living. I guess that's the goal for the years that we have. Our own lives, our families' lives, and it's the food.
And it's always been the food.
It's always the food. It's just started.
Well, that is a perfect place to end until next month. Thank you so much, Dr. John and Mary McDougall, for gracing us with your
It's
presence.
always fun to be with
It's
you.
always fun.
It
And-
is fun.
Congratulations on the crowd of people that you've been able to gather to attend your well worthwhile lectures.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting that you bring different points of view in all the time.
Right. I'm having Dr. Lustig on at the end of the month. Hopefully he'll be nice to me. I mean, I will be very nice to him. So
You said you told me that you'd be nice to him, but I gave you some.
I know I'm so, I can be confrontational, but I just don't want, I don't know. I do want to ask him about Kempner though. So I'll say, Dr. McDougall would like to know.
You asked me about him.
That's how I'll phrase it. So anyway, that's great. Well, thank you so much. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Happy Labor Day. If you celebrate the Jewish New Year, happy holidays to you. And please come back tomorrow when my guest is PCRN's Dr. Jim Loomis. Do you know who he is, Dr. McDougall? He's a wonderful plant-based doctor.
What does he recommend?
Well, same as you. He's wonderful. He works at the Barnard Medical Center.
Oh, okay. Well, Neil Bernard and I've been very close. I have to say, I find it hard to find anything that Neil and Bernard and I disagree on.
Yeah, he's
So
great.
he'd be no fun to have on the show with me at all.
Oh,
But Michael Greger, I seriously, I hope you understand this in the vein that I'm trying to say. That he's really good.
oh, we love him.
I love a challenge, and I think Michael and I would be there to provide a real entertaining hour for you. We
I
talk
think
about
so.
5 different issues that he and I don't exactly see, but they're minor things.
Right.
You know, the major things we really agree on wholeheartedly.
Well, we should probably sell tickets for that one.
Yeah, you should.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. John and Mary McDougall. It's so great seeing you.
Pleasure.
And thank you, AJ.